Some years ago, there was a true story, a 17-year-old boy who had graduated from high school, and he wanted to work in the mines, in the coal mines in West Virginia. He grew up in that area, and it was time for him to work and to make good money. He thought it would be a great job. He'd have a lot of spending money, and it would be lots of adventure. So he went off to the mines to prove to those miners that he was every bit their equal. The second week on the job, he got down into the deep mines, but he neglected the miners' warnings. They told him to stay close to them and to never wander off by himself. But he, being young, he decided to do as he pleased. So he ventured off into a cave that was close to where he was. And sure enough, he got lost. He realized what had happened and called out, hoping to get attention from other miners. But they'd already moved on to another area where they were working. Suddenly, as he was trying to find his way back, the light on his miner hat went out. And at that point, he did become frightened. He yelled out at the top of his voice, but no one heard him. He was suddenly overwhelmed by the realization that he was alone, completely alone. He began to think that no one would ever find him, and that this might be the very place where he, at 17 years of age, might die. He literally fell on his knees and he prayed, "Oh God, please help me. I'm scared and I don't want to die and I don't know what to do." And then he realized something. As he was kneeling in pure darkness on the mine floor, he noticed that his right knee was touching something very hard. He reached down to feel what it was, and it was the rail track for one of the cars. The boy realized that if he kept his hand on the track and crawled on the ground, it would eventually lead him out of the mine. And that is exactly what happened. It's amazing how we tend to listen better after we've gotten knocked down to our knees. Isn't it amazing how we're more attentive there? I know I am. And sometimes it's a knock that takes us to our knees. Sometimes it's just genuine humility. Sometimes it's fear. In that position, upon our knees, we become more willing to listen to truth. It was on his knees in the pig pit that the younger son came to his senses, and that is the way it is written. When he came to his senses, that's how it is written. It was true for him, and it can also be true for us as well. One day, a little girl was running as fast as she could to school. Time was running out. She didn't want to be late for that bell. The morning classes would begin. And so she prayed to God, "Dear God, please don't let me late. Don't let me be late. Please don't let me be late." As she was running, she tripped over a curb that was there at the edge of the street. When she got her clothes messy and dirty, she got up, tried to brush herself off, and started running again. And she continued with her prayer, "Oh God, please don't let me be late, but don't shove me down again either." God leads you. He does not push you. But there are times we find ourselves upon our knees. He leads us into truth. Sometimes we're ready to listen to that truth. And when we do, when we arrive at that point where we are ready to listen, we learn from it. One of the truths that confronted the younger son, the son who squandered his inheritance and eventually found himself in the pig pit, was, I think, simply this: sometimes what you are most looking for is right there in front of you. He left behind his family, his home, his good job. He left behind a loving father. It's amazing how those very things that now he was running away from, in a short time, he came running back to. It was always right there in front of him. But he had to learn its value. What the younger son was looking for had been right there in front of him all the time. He had to discover the truth of it all. Imagine that. The very thing you would leave running from now becomes the very thing you come home running back to. One of the truths confronted by the older brother, the one who never asked for his share of the inheritance and who never stopped working and who could not share in the joy of his brother's return. One of the things that I think maybe he learned was simply this: his father's love was not to be earned because it was freely given. See, I think the older brother thought he was owed something because of his faithfulness, because of his steadiness. He never did something wrong. He never squandered his money. And I think he was thinking his father owes him for that. The parable ends without us knowing what the other brother finally did to surrender his pride and his jealousy, whether he really went inside the house in celebration of his younger brother's return. See, we don't know what happened. My heart tells me that the older brother came to his senses like the younger brother and went inside and hugged his brother and got on with the celebration of it all. That's what my heart tells me. But my head tells me he never went in the house. And who's to say whether he did or he didn't? That's one of the reasons Jesus' parables are so good. Sometimes we have to put an ending to it. Have you learned that truth about God? That God never gives up on you? Just like the love of that father. The father couldn't have approved what the younger son did. Everything he did stood against the integrity and the character of that father. Everything. But he never left his son. In fact, as we read the scripture, and I know there are paintings that depict this, we picture the father on the porch of his home or out front, looking at a distance for the return of that son. There's one painting where the sandals have actually come off of the father as he is running so fast to go embrace his son who is returning. God never gives up on us.